Thank you, Chairman. On that, let's talk about the workforce for a little bit. Admiral Ferguson, just to be sure I understand what you're saying, that if the shipyard people get furloughed, your view is that some of them eventually decide this is not my long-term career path?
I think that's the potential outcome, Senator.
General Welsh, I asked the other day about the F-18 line in St. Louis, because that's the big line I'm the most familiar with. We have lots of little defense contractors in Missouri. I did a tour of some of these businesses last year. As I recall, one of them was out in the country, and the office had at one time been a dairy barn built onto, everything's run by computer, very sophisticated, very purposeful. But of course, if they don't have that contract, I'm sure they're not conditioned in a way that allows them to just wait until the next that business would go away. But what about like the big lines, General Welsh? I've always been told that if that ever goes away, that's why some of our foreign military sales were so important, to keep the line open. What are your concerns if you all have to say we aren't going to be able to follow through with our plan for the number of planes that we've ordered?
So some of the major defense contractors have the ability to absorb some of that workforce into their public side of the house. Boeing's an example, with a very large public aircraft production capacity. Where we are facing a more immediate problem with sequestration, especially just for the remainder of this year, is in our depot maintenance workforce. If we stop for example, the 150 airplanes and 85 engines I mentioned not going into depot if sequestration occurs for the remainder of this fiscal year, we will furlough, not just furlough the workforce that's there working in the depot maintenance facilities, but the workload will also stop. And many of the small business contracts that provide parts and people to come in and do specialized work as part of that depot maintenance will really start to go down.
So this would be a furlough not because you're furloughing people because of sequestration, because you're furloughing people that sequestration meant they didn't have any work to do.
Sir, yes, sir. It'll be both.
Well, let's talk about the other part of that furlough. General Grass, you and I visited the other day both some of your uniform personnel, because of the way you function uniquely, where you have civilians wearing a uniform at things like the AVCRAD. But on your civilian personnel, what are you thinking you'd have to do in terms of just telling them not to show up for work a certain number of days for the next 6 months?
Yes, Senator, if full sequestration were to kick in, and some of the information we've passed on to the adjutant generals right now to plan on is 1 day a week maximum for the rest of the fiscal year, starting probably in April. Again, we haven't implemented that. We're taking a look at that. What it really means, especially for the National Guard, is the bulk of our maintenance is completed each day by our civilian technicians, our military, the ones that wear uniform to work each day. And as we begin to draw those down for that time period, we begin to see a decrement in our readiness of our armories across the nation. And I just did a study the other day and looked at a 10% reduction of our rolling stock and our aviation here within the next 6 months. And that's on top of already a depot shutdown that's going to cause us problems.
All right, I may have some more questions just in writing on furloughs generally. Secretary Carter, I have one last question. I'm out of time, but I appreciated your sense that even if you're given some flexibility now, the time is so short and what money's left, that might not do what you need to have done. Were you asked when you submitted your budget to submit an alternative for the sequestration number for next year?
No, we were not. We're prepared. We were asked to prepare the 14 budget according to the fiscal guidance that we were given late last year.
All right. Thank you.